Hello, I'm your host Jim McClean. Welcome back to another episode of the BanterFlix movie review show. Let's see what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing If, which is out in cinemas now. Our pick of the streams is Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever. And our documentary season continues with Tim Burton's choice. So that's what I've lined up for you this evening. Joining me in the studio here in Belfast this evening is our very own Joe McElroy.
Good evening, Jim.
And Dr. Nicole Hamilton.
Hello.
Hello to you both. As I say, packed show. We try every week to squeeze as much as we can into half an hour. So let's kick things off with a bit of movie news.
Is it scary being a lady FBI agent?
Yeah.
Take a nice long look. The letter was left with the bodies. Signed with one word.
So that's a look at the trailer for Longlegs. There was a couple of trailers actually we could have picked since the show was last recorded. We've had our first real look at Wicked. But Longlegs caught my attention. I'm a horror fan. Serious Silence of the Lambs vibes going on, which is a film I love, so very much intrigued by that. Nicole, you're a horror fan. I know Joe is too, but you're a horror fan, so we'll come to you first in just a second, because there's a reason why Joe can't tell us that much about Longlegs. But are you excited about this?
I am really excited about it. I really enjoyed Osgood Perkins' last directorial feature, and I think he has a really, really keen eye for horror and just for still shots in general that look terrifying but stunning. So I'm really excited to see what he does with something that is maybe, I don't want to say plot heavy, but has a little bit more going on in it than his last couple of films have. So yeah, really, really excited for it.
Yeah, you've got Maika Monroe, you've got Nick Cage, what's not to like? And this is then when I come back to you, Joe, because you're boycotting this trailer. And I say boycotting in jest because you're a bit like me. Every summer, every year, you kind of give yourself a little cinematic treat where you avoid trailers. So we asked you to look at the trailer this week and you simply said no. So I'm going to imagine, you're very excited for this movie.
Well, I am, and
But you know nothing about it.
No, I know nothing about it, and I don't want you to take my treat away from it. I know around the film, like I know it's an Osgood Perkins film, I know Maika Monroe and Nicolas Cage are in it, and I was like, I'm sold. I don't want to know anything about this film. I know it just involves the hunt for a serial killer, that's it. And it's more or less to do with the same reasons Nicole has just described Osgood Perkins. He's just a keen eye for just making unsettling images on the screen. And the tone and the atmosphere of his films are just superb. And I'm just like, right, you've got that director with these actors in this kind of premise. I'm all here for it, but I don't want to know anything about it because a lot of trailers nowadays just spoil the whole thing.
Nicole, coming back to you, we're talking about films that are yet to be released. We've just had the Cannes Film Festival. There's a few films I know you're very excited to be talking about that have come out from Cannes. Yeah,
the main one that I'm excited about is The Substance, another horror film that people are saying is evoking the likes of David Cronenberg. It's really body horror focused. And also it stars two of my favourite actresses at the minute, Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. And I'm somebody who has always wanted Demi Moore to go into genre films, and she has started to do that a little bit more the last couple of years with like Please Baby Please. And I'm just really excited to see kind of what she can do whenever she's just allowed to let loose in a genre picture like this, so I'm very, very excited about it.
I know last week we were talking about Francis Ford Coppola's film that had just screened at Cannes. Joe, for you, just, I know you haven't seen the trailer for Longlegs. Anything you're particularly excited about?
No, I don't like to spoil films at all for myself, so I haven't even read anything. No, in all seriousness, well, like you've alluded to, Megalopolis is one that's really caught my eye because very mixed bag in terms of reactions with that. But for me, I'm going to go into old man territory. I'm really looking forward to Horizon. Kevin Costner putting 38 million of his own money up front in a bit of a vanity project. It's the first of a 4-part series and it's 3 hours long. I want it, and I want it now.
Well, we should also point out that it's a Western, and that
Of
is very
course.
much a genre of your choice. You know, over lockdown, you kept many people entertained with your love for the Western genre. So I guess, you know, that's probably the biggest selling point, and Kevin Costner as well.
Oh, of course. Like even like his westerns, his last big western that I recall, I think it's Open Range. He may have done one in between. I'm just not sure, but I really liked Open Range. And who knows, if we're doing it in the show, Cowboy Joe might come back.
We'll have to wait and see. So those are films that are yet to be released. I think it's time to move on and chat about a movie we've all seen.
What happened? Well, she was putting that creepy doll to sleep. She stopped. She looked up. She definitely felt something. So I slowly walked over to her, and as I got close,
Wait,
I...
what are you doing? No. Don't do this. Hey, don't do this, okay? Blue. Hey. I swear to God, I will never speak to you again as long as I live. Do this, please. Do not do that. Please. Hey.
So that's a look at John Krasinski's If. It's out in cinemas now. Heavy vibes of Inside Out. A lot of Pixar's back catalogue. A lot of Spielberg in there with this strange little film about a young girl who can see her imaginary friends, or if other people's imaginary friends, I should say, and she then sets about to help Ryan Reynolds match up in this bizarre kind of concept. There's a lot going on here. I have a lot to say about the film. Massive fan of John Krasinski. Nicole, we mentioned earlier on, you're a fan of horror. We've had The Quiet Place and Quiet Place Part 2. He's moved away from the horror genre. He's now Mr. Family Drama. I know our very own Jim McClean here in Belfast has that title, but has John Krasinski taken it from him, Nicole?
So unlike you, I am not a John Krasinski fan. The man does absolutely nothing for me, and he kind of irritates me every single time I see him. But I went into this film kind of hoping that I would enjoy it a bit more. I got the Inside Out kind of vibes and the Spielberg in quality of it, and I was really, really hoping that I was going to get that sort of feeling from it. And in some parts I did, in other parts I kind of just wanted it to get to where it was going and be done. I found it a little bit hokey in places. I found some of it, particularly the score, felt a little bit manipulative to me. It felt like it was trying really, really, really hard to tug on my heartstrings and didn't necessarily earn it that much. I can see why some younger audiences might like it, but I don't know if it does enough to kind of make it enjoyable for everybody, I guess, which maybe is not the point, but it didn't quite hit for me.
I don't think it's as manipulative as other films, like, say, Marley and Me, which is much more, I felt like I sit in my cinema seat, if you don't cry, you're a bad person. I'm just a bit disappointed. It's all over the place. I mean, it's not a spoiler to say John Krasinski himself is in the film. I mean, he likes to direct films where he plays the dad. I guess that's his thing. I don't know what's going on with his character. He's really kind of quirky and weird. The film dabbles with big subject matter, but doesn't really address it. It's theme and ideas that we should, you know, take time, pause, reflect, and think back to our youth and not lose that, which is a great message. But also, without, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, within the film's opening, 5-10 minutes, even if that, in kind of very up style, we have a daughter come to terms with the loss of her mother. And that's never really properly addressed. So I thought it was fine. Yes, I cried, but anyone who knows me, watches this show, knows I will cry at the drop of a hat. I'm a pushover when it comes to these type of things. Yes, I cried. I didn't feel like I was manipulated. I do think the score is a bit all over the place. I'm disappointed. So John, I'm disappointed. Joe, what about you?
I think I'm a bit kinder than you two go with the film, because going into it, I was dreading it, to be perfectly honest. If I see a film poster with Ryan Reynolds and I'm like, oh great, here comes the cinematic Antichrist again to ruin another film. But here, he's actually all right. He reins in his usual stick, which he's sort of riffing on Deadpool for the last 10 years. But here, it's perfectly fine. I kind of like the film. I think it is all over the place in terms of, it doesn't really have focus as such. It's just like, here's one scene, and then here's another scene, and here's another scene, where it's just a case of, oh, we're going to try and make you cry with that one. Well, we didn't make you cry with that one, we're going to make you cry with this one, and so on and so forth. It tries to do that constantly, and just feels like a barrage of that throughout. And obviously, Michael Giacchino's score is the one that's backing up, and I'm sitting there the whole time going, don't you dare make me cry. I'm not enjoying this enough to make me cry. It doesn't deserve it. So I did feel like I was being manipulated in that sense. I did like the look of it at times. I think the young actress was quite good. I can't remember her name, but I know she was in The Walking Dead, and as a diehard Walking Dead fan, even through the darkest days of that show, I've stuck by it. And she's always been great in that, and it was nice to see her in this here. And Fiona Shaw's quite good in her small role, and even the voice cast's quite good across the board. But at the same time, it's just perfectly fine. Like, just going back to what Nicole was even saying about, you know, how this film would play even the young audiences. I have a 3-year-old niece, and I don't know if she would have the attention span to sit through this kind of a film, especially when the opening half is getting to the whole main concept of ifs. So I think it's perfectly fine, but not much more than that.
Yeah, it lacks the razor focus of Pixar and what they do. They break their concepts down and execute them with a sense of simplicity. It's just a bit muddled in its concept and its idea. And the last thing we'll say, because I think it's a mixed bag for If, is my lovely wife went to cinema and she bulged her eyes out pretty much from start to finish. And both her and our neighbour went to see it with us, and they both absolutely loved it. As I say, I'm sitting on the fence. I'm a little bit disappointed because I just, you know, I thought John was going to do another home run. But hey, we'll have to wait for the next time he hits behind the camera. So I think with that, we will move on. That's in cinemas now, but for people who want to watch something at home, let's move on to our pick of the streams.
Der kommer nogle aftener nu, hvor jeg ikke kommer hjem.
Nå, okay.
Jeg har fået natarbejde.
Natarbejde? Hvorfor? Hvorfor det?
Jeg har brug for penge.
Men altså, jeg har da penge, eller jeg kan skaffe nogle penge.
Jeg har ikke en krone, du kræfter mig engang på bistand.
Man får cancer af natarbejde, det er påvist. Hvad er det for noget natarbejde?
Det er dit gamle. Nattevagt på retsmedicinsk. Er der noget, vi skal snakke om? Det tænker jeg nok.
So that's a look at Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever. It's streaming now on Shudder, and I think I have to hold my hand up here. We always go for the big streamers like Netflix, Prime, Disney+. We often overlook there are other streaming sites available, and Shudder is one dedicated to horror fans like ourselves all here this evening. And one of the films that is there now is Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever, as we say. It's a sequel to the 1994 original, although some may know Nightwatch from the remake, American remake, 97, I think, with Ewan McGregor. And yeah, you know, standard slasher setup, you know, what can we say? We have a daughter looking to save her father from the terrors and the memories of what happened before in the first film, and unfortunately, bad things happen. That's as much as we can say, really, without going too spoilerifically. Joe, what do you think?
I wasn't a huge fan of it, to be perfectly honest. Problem with it, it goes back in those tropes of legacy sequels, which lately that's all they're about, is just trauma. And it's a trope that I'm sort of sick to the back teeth of when it comes to the slasher genre. Like, we already got it in Halloween, we got it in the Scream films to an extent there recently. And here it just makes the film feel a bit more sluggish. And I think that's sort of reflected in the runtime as well. Like, it's not really paced that well. It just takes too long to get to where it needs to go. But when it gets there, it is quite good. You know, the actual slasher elements are quite good, and those scenes are executed quite well. But in getting to there, you just sort of feel the time really, you know, taking its toll on you watching it.
Yeah, I would largely agree with you. And I saw this actually at the London Film Festival last year, and I actually at the time was quite positive about it. And then I was worried after re-watching it for the show, I was like, was I swayed at the time? And you get caught up, you're sitting at a big premiere event and you get a chance to speak, which we will come to. We have a short interview with the director and his daughter who stars in the film. Do you get swayed and all that from having chatted to him? And you know, he's quite amiable and it was a great chat with him at the festival. Watching it second time around, I thought it was fine. Like you said, I think the slasher elements are executed well. I just think in terms of the plot itself, it's a bit ropey, it's contrived at times. We have all the deliberate red herrings that we know who is the slasher going to be. There are some great sequences within the film where you know that it's a director that knows what he's doing within the genre. It's just in a sense that everything that connects that is a bit ropey, contrived. We've seen it before. I guess the draw for a lot of people will be, oh, there's Jamie from Game of Thrones. Hopefully he doesn't have a sister this time round, but we'll not pull on that thread right now. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess the film's cult status is earned from the fact it's a Danish slasher. And it was made around the time when Danish cinema didn't have that many slashers of their own. So I guess that's where it's got its cult status. It's perfectly serviceable. As I mentioned, at the London Film Festival last year, the film got screened and I got a chance to speak with the film's director, Ole Bornedal, and his daughter, Fanny Leander Bornedal.
Well, my name is Ole Bornedal and I'm a Danish film director, producer, screenwriter. I have been doing that for almost 33 years. My debut was Nightwatch in '94, which actually was the first genre film and Danish film with international success. Did a remake of it, rewrote the screenplay together with Steven Soderbergh in '96 and had a wonderful cast. Ewan McGregor's first American film, Josh Brolin, Patricia Arquette, Nick Nolte. John C. Reilly couldn't wish for a better cast.
Hvad er det for noget natarbejde?
Dit gamle nattevagt på retsmedicinsk.
I created this story, which actually took base in the first story, but still you can watch this film independently from the first one. It will the platform is the original story. Now the daughter, having grown up with a mom and dad who never spoke about what actually happened some 30 years ago when they were almost killed. And now the young woman wants to find out what actually happened then.
It has been really awesome. And of course I don't have the same relationship with the movie The Nightwatch as my father does, or as Nikolai or Kim Bodnia. So it feels like a new film for me to do, but at the same time it's really cool that it already have a fan base and it's something that people are very excited about to see. So that's really awesome and nice to work with Nikolai and Kim. They are very talented and I've learned a lot from them. Nice hearing about their stories from 30 years ago. So yeah, it's been very nice.
Og så stiller han mig det spørgsmål. Enhver buddhist vil elske at få.
Har du nogensinde prøvet at blive slået ihjel?
I think the first Nightwatch was interesting because it has a psychological subtext. Actually, the film was not that much about the plot of a serial killer. It was also about two young men trying to grow up and try to take life seriously. So when I came to this story, the second time, after these 30 years, I came up with another psychological subtext, which I found very interesting, about the white elephant in the room that you find in every family. There's always a secret. There's always a conflict that no one actually speaks about. So that's actually the platform for Nightwatch Demons Are Forever that I needed in order to tell the story. So just as important it is to make a suspenseful thriller with a solid plot, it's important for me as a storyteller to have that psychological platform, which I find is important to talk about white elephants, which is basically, yeah, the whole setup of the movie.
So that's my interview with Ole Bornedal and his daughter Fanny, talking about Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever. So Nicole, Joe and I we've been a bit down on Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever. It's got a catchy title, but were you caught up by the film?
I feel like I'm slightly more positive on it than both of you. I wouldn't say it's like the best thing I've ever seen, but I had a good time with it. It was more slickly directed than I assumed that it would be based on the fun title. And I had never seen the original, so I went in with absolutely no expectations, had no idea what was going to happen, and found myself kind of caught up in the mystery of it all. And then I got about an hour in and was kind of like, okay, you're taking your time, maybe we hurry it up a wee bit. So by the end of it, I was a little bit kind of not down in the dumps, but I was just kind of like, okay, that could have been better. There was aspects of it, like both of you have said, that I felt were really derivative of David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, which I'm not a fan of at the best of times. So those things kind of didn't really work for me that well. But overall, I'd say it was all right. I didn't mind it.
It's fine. It's a perfectly serviceable slasher, and it's Danish, so it's a little bit more cultured. What can I say? I think with that, we're going to move on. We can't agree on everything. We haven't agreed on a film yet this evening, so we're going to move on. And our documentary season here at BanterFlix is continuing ahead of Docs Ireland in June. And this week, it's over to Tim Burden from the Braid Film Theatre with his choice.
Thank you. We're going back to 1986 and one of the best documentaries, which is available to stream on Amazon Prime, is the making of Paul Simon's Graceland. Now here's an album which I think everyone certainly has heard of, but one of the special things about the album is its multicultural reach. We know the South African connection with all the musicians and the wonderful heritage of the musicians that Paul Simon embraced and brought to the world, and the vocals, the guitar playing, and the production elements are just first class. And the great thing about this documentary, you don't have to be a music nerd to appreciate it, because it's really a very, very easy, accessible way to learn how Paul Simon actually put together the album with these fantastic, talented South African musicians. Like, here's a little clip I'm going to show you here, just to give you a taste. He's at the mixing desk and he's got the multi-track masters of the Graceland album, and he shows us You Call Me Al, one of the classic moments of that song. Have a listen.
It sounded conventional, so what we did was we took the first bar of the solo, spliced it, flipped it around, and made the second half of the solo the backwards tape of the first half of the solo. Backwards. Okay.
Just a little taste of Paul Simon, The Making of Graceland, one of the many classic albums, documentaries, which is highly recommended.
So that's Tim with his choice for our documentary season, the Paul Simon classic albums, I guess, about Graceland. It's streaming on Amazon Prime, so people can access this like we've had with Shudder. You don't have to go to cinema for these things. Joe, I'll come to you first. Are you a Paul Simon fan? This is the second musical documentary we've had. We've had Tina Turner documentary a couple of weeks ago. Now we have Paul Simon classic albums about Graceland. I guess this is fundamentally, the clues in the title, essentially about the making of one album. It's not a career spanning documentary. It's focused on one particular album.
Well, my knowledge of Paul Simon coming in the documentary was basically just a song, You Can Call Me Al, because it's at every wedding. So that was it, the be all and end all. But going into this and understand the process that was behind the making of the album, I actually quite enjoyed it, and I thought it was quite interesting because I had no idea of the influence of South African music on the album, especially at the time he was doing that, during apartheid. I found that absolutely fascinating, and then even the build-up, how he was just coming off of failure. He's like, well, I don't sort of know where to go next. He heard this music and it inspired him to, make an album centered in and around that. And the little intricacies are the things that really drew me in, like in terms of like sound levels and looping and stuff like that. I was like, that's my bread and butter when it comes to music documentaries. I love that kind of stuff. So that's sort of the positive. The negative is it's a very sort of ordinary sort of documentary. There's nothing that is out of the blue or left field that makes you go, oh wow, like it's perfectly functional for what it's trying to do. That's basically the main issue with it. But as a whole, if you know nothing about them, or even if you love the album, there's something there for both sides.
It's a short documentary, it's an hour. I think looking into kind of Tim's choice, this is part of a TV series. So it feels like you have an hour, you can get as much information about the making of the album as you can. Thought it was fine, thought it was serviceable. Unlike the Tina Turner documentary we talked about as we kicked off our documentary season, I don't know essentially if there's enough there for if you're not a fan of Paul Simon, would you want to sit down and seek it out? But like you made the point, Joe, it's always interesting seeing the kind of the construction of an album and getting the chance to hear from the artists themselves where they took their influence and the process of making the album. So pros and cons. I didn't love it. I wouldn't overly say go out of your way to recommend it unless you know more Paul Simon songs than you and I, Joe. And this is the point where maybe Nicole, you're going to reveal yourself to be a massive Paul Simon fan. You're going to be able to name off the top of your head at least 10 or 15 of his top-selling singles, or are you like us, limited knowledge of his solo output?
I am more of a Simon and Garfunkel person than Paul Simon. I don't think I had ever heard, to my knowledge, any of his solo work before listening to Graceland. Similar to you both, I didn't love the documentary. I think functional is exactly the right word for it, because there's a lot of kind of Paul Simon talking about lyrics and things like that, that if you're interested in that sort of thing, then that will maybe be insightful. For me personally, the thing that I found interesting and wanted a lot more of was the situation in which it was created in the apartheid, and I would have preferred, and maybe this is due to the time period, but I would have preferred a slightly more critical lens. Like, they do touch on the criticism that Paul Simon got for making an album about South Africa using South African music, but then they don't really go into why specifically he was criticised, and I think that maybe a bit more balance in that conversation would have made it a little bit more interesting for me anyway. But much like you as well, I really enjoyed the little sound stuff, and the bassist was probably my favourite part of it. I really enjoyed him. So yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, perfectly serviceable. We're not damning the film in any way. I just, my honest opinion is that I just don't know if there's enough here. If you've zero interest in Paul Simon, I don't know if you're going to find too much here other than what you've both mentioned, which is always interesting, hearing artists kind of discussing the construction of an album in itself. That's the main draw. But hey, this is the whole idea of this season, is that different people are choosing documentaries and what they mean to them. So yes, that's Tim's choice. Next week we'll have another documentary to conclude our season, and then in June we're going to have an LGBTQ+ month. So that's pretty much us. We're out of time here in the studio here in Belfast. So all that's left for me to do now is thank my two guests. So thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thanks very much to Tim as well. We'll be back next week with another episode, but for now, until then, goodbye.